After a long, drawn-out breakup, it's difficult being back on the singles market. You'll see where I'm going with this. And meeting new potentials. Trust me, I speak from experience. But that is exactly what the newly single Britannia is going to have to do. But where to move on to? Well, we've been swiping away, and there's a Mr. Big across the pond who seems really interested. Said possible new trading suitor is a rather fetching continent with a young population, 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, and 60% of the world's arable land. Yes, I am talking about Africa, the most popular continent to invest in right now. Just ask China. And with our diverse dietary taste, being able to import produce from Africa, tariff-free, feels like having your jollof and eating it. Our PM is certainly ready to tuck in after hosting the Invest in Africa Summit in London this week. I say this is the way to go. We Remainers have to accept defeat. There's no point crying over spilt Brexit milk. But if we are out of Europe, then I believe we should be in Africa the right way.
As regular viewers of this programme will know, I very rarely agree with you.
Okay.
But we're starting this new year, a new decade, on a different footing, because on this, I absolutely do agree with you. I think that people have an outdated view in some regards of Africa and its economies. Like you say, it's host to some of the world's fastest growing economies at the moment.
Ghana has been #1 for the past 2 years, just to say.
It's got a huge and very quickly growing tech sector, and I personally think that tech is the future in lots of different ways. But I do think you have to be realistic in terms of priorities, because I think when we come out of the EU, I think the first priority is obviously going to be trying to sort something out with the EU. And I personally think next will come probably the US, next will come China, and then possibly Africa, because it is a fact that actually when you look at the trade that UK has been doing with Africa, it has been on the decline, and I think it represents about 2.5% of the UK's overall trade is with Africa. So as a Brexiteer, I do believe Brexit presents exciting opportunities to trade with rest of world, but I think we need to be realistic about the priorities and what that looks like.
Can I bring in what our Prime Minister had to say on this issue, and then whoever wants to pick up after that? Let's have a look.
But in the words of an old Akan proverb that I picked up in Ghana, all fingers are not the same. There's wisdom in these Akan proverbs. All fingers are not the same, and all countries are not the same. And the UK boasts a breadth and a depth of expertise that simply cannot be matched by any other nation.
Alf, I'm going to come to you in a moment, because I saw you rolling your eyes.
How did he manage to mispronounce Akan?
Let me finish. But what he did say, actually, in the rest of that speech, was that Britain cannot expect to get any special treatment, and that it was about redefining the relationship between the United Kingdom and the rest of Africa. So the point and the sort of the position he played was actually quite impressive. And I, as you know, don't often say that, but I have to say he was brilliant.
Let me try to be positive here.
Yes.
I mean, thank you for raising this topic, because this has been a huge summit and a really important one. And I agree with everything you said. I think that it's incredibly important to have a fair and positive relationship with the African continent. I think that you're right, in the post-Brexit landscape, we will need to do these trade deals. And I like hearing the Prime Minister speaking with a bit more humility towards the African continent,
talking about quoting Akan proverbs.
Quoting Akan proverbs, albeit he managed to mispronounce Akan. But anyway, the spirit is there, that's great. But a little bit of reality check. I think at the moment, first of all, this used to be a colonial relationship.
Of course.
And I see the ghosts of that relationship everywhere, even in this summit. So I've heard a lot about British businesses getting into Africa, procurement, supplying. I haven't heard any big African businesses securing big tenders in the UK. Trade should be two-way.
Has to be.
How are we opening our doors and inviting African businesses to work and make money in the UK?
Are we bolting shut? No, we're not.
Well, I haven't seen any emphasis on the two. Well, are we shutting them out? And the second point I want to make is that when leaders on the African continent of innovation, tech, and infrastructure have been invited to the UK by globally recognised bodies like the WTO. They have been denied visas by this government. I mean, it's embarrassing.
Well, not this government. It can't be this government. They've only been going for a week or two.
Story, well, the previous Conservative government. Story after story of people who are hugely respected on the African continent, front runners in their field, having the indignity of having their visa applications denied.
Do you see the positive in anything?
I started with a very positive response.
You're picking up negative. You haven't even got any proof for the negatives.
This sounds good, OK? But I want to see the substance. I want to see Africans being treated as people who have something crucial to offer this country, as equals who are welcome here in the same way that Britain is now being told it's welcome on the African continent.
Well, don't you think, I totally understand your point, but don't you think that actually Brexit does change things in terms of the position that the UK is in now? It's a totally different landscape. So the people that you're talking about who didn't get the visas before and so on, it's a very different landscape now. So let's see what happens a couple of years.
It wasn't a different landscape, June. It was in a climate where there's this hugely toxic anti-immigration feeling. I don't think Brexit has cured us of that.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it has.
About fair treatment. I mean, one of the things I was interested in, you know, throughout the referendum was about EU protectionism and tariffs and the kind of tariffs that get imposed on sort of African arable farmers. Is there scope here, June, for African farmers to get a better deal?
Well, there has to be, 100%. And also, the thing that's interesting is actually if you look at the amount of land that is available and the fact that food shortages are going to be a huge problem for us in the future, Africa is the answer to that. So whether we like it or not, we're going to have to remove those tariffs because we need them.
And I was looking, you know, the amount of trade we do with a country like Egypt, what is it, 150 million people? We do practically no trade there. And it just, you know, it's another example. And, you know, there have been positive notes struck by everybody that you have to, we've just got to be proactive. That's one of my fears. When the pound slumped in currency, we all spoke about these export opportunities and exports haven't really risen. So what I'd like to see is the talk be matched by actual business deals being done.
I'd just like to point out a little irony here. The African continent is really on the rise, in part because of all these intense efforts to achieve greater regional integration, regional bodies, harmonising trade, because they recognise that actually to be strong in the global economy, you need to be in a trade bloc with your neighbours, just saying.
What I find most fascinating about this entire debate is that June Sarpong, the arch-Remainer, anti-Brexit, cheerleader of Labour, I just hear you say Boris Johnson is brilliant.
Yeah, I said the speech was brilliant. It was. The speech was brilliant.
Well, look, listen, I'd quite like to talk to Jude about some investment opportunities in the break. Coming up next on The Pledge, why likes and retweets aren't always the key to #success.